What did you say?
I called you cheap because that's what I think of you.
Who do you think you're
You're a
talking
cheap,
to?
tacky little tramp who every week becomes less and less.
Flaccid.
Watch what you say, Melon. I don't have to take this anymore. I don't have to take this any longer.
Whoa, guys. Holy smokes. They left me cooking here, Mark. Jeez. If it was bad enough, they got a hurricane, hit my hometown, and then they leave me hanging. My producer leave me hanging. I'm in here in the Florida fishing cabin, Mark. Look at this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good digs. That's cool. I'm in my basement, so you're doing better than I am.
Okay, so let's talk about dead fish. Let's talk about Kamala Harris's polling from this weekend. Not great when NBC News says Trump is winning the popular vote. That's like a bad sign, I think.
No, this was so predictable though, because nobody thought that she had the substance to get past, the DNC all the way to election day on literally inauthenticity and media production. And I saw it coming, and she's absolutely crashed. The crazy thing is that all these pollsters that were out there on the left, like supporting her, have all of a sudden started running for the hills. ABC News is not the only one. They had Harris up 5. Now it's a tie. Like newsflash, she didn't just all of a sudden, the race didn't move 5 points to the right. That's just them trying to not be inaccurate in the numbers that actually count. But ABC News Ipsos is doing it as well. New York Times, Siena, I think, is going to start doing it. CBS News is doing it. They're all coming to the right. And that's because I think this kind of loser narrative is creeping into the press that she might actually lose, and people need to start preparing their viewers for that.
Mark, I was credibly informed that Megan Thee Stallion twerking on stage was going to save Kamala, and that's what Americans want right now. The Israel's like at war, Ukraine's at war, Taiwan's at war, whole Middle East is on fire. That our currency is worthless, that the border's open. But you know what? Megan Thee Stallion, she twerked her ass on stage, and that's what Americans need right now. That's what we've been looking for. And so you're telling me that didn't work?
No, I mean, it's like they're playing into the media. They're playing into the electorate they think that we had 10 or 15 years ago, where corporatized, glossy crap is what people respond to. Stephen Colbert, like after embarrassing himself on the world stage dancing with the vaccines, is not going to help you pick up new voters. Tim Walz even, like, listen, this guy probably knows how to operate a shotgun. I think he was probably whatever, right?
No
but
way.
The point is that look at how they're using Twitter, though. They're putting out these corporatized tweets that just look like what Twitter was 10 years ago, and they think that's going to help them win, and it just absolutely isn't. And now they have 3 weeks left, and it's all coming crashing down. Now, I think the big news is I stayed up really late last night, finished our state polling of Pennsylvania, and we have Trump up 3. The crosstabs aren't out yet. They're coming out in the next couple hours. Okay. But that is a move to the right for us. We had Trump tied back in September, but we did poll right after the presidential debate. But that's massive. That's at the margin of error. That's Trump winning Pennsylvania. A lot of other pollsters agree with us, even the New York Times, and we could get into that. But we've never been here before in October with Trump winning in Pennsylvania, which is the key to all of this.
Here you go, bro. All right, so Trump +3. This is Rasmussen. This is your poll this morning. And it aligns with what? Trafalgar and Atlas? And the New York Times? What? Bro.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Well, the New York Times had Harris +3, but the point is that they're oversampling Democrats by like 7 points in there. They have a Biden 2020 recalled vote at +8 when he only won the state by 1. So if you corrected that, it becomes, a Harris +3 to a Trump +4. They just don't want to take credit for it. That's what it ultimately comes down to.
So can you talk me through, what is the path exactly now for Kamala Harris? I don't see it.
What they could have done is just have an open convention, go through the democratic process. Everybody, they would have probably been in a lot more unified situation. Instead, they did all these backroom dealings and blackmailed people, and there was all this backbiting and backstabbing and Pelosi ostensibly turning on Biden. What do you think was going to happen here in October when it all of a sudden looked like, in a very predictable way, you weren't going to win the race? This is exactly what you're seeing. And I think Newt Gingrich probably put his, this is just conjecture, but Newt Gingrich put his finger on it when all of a sudden he said, Biden probably looked around and said, well, I could keep my legacy of being the only person to beat Donald Trump. And now he threw her under the bus. I think that's what probably happened.
Ooh, that is malevolent, man.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Okay, so let's talk through some of these projections really quickly. Can you walk us through this weekend's polls leading up to your poll here in Pennsylvania? But there are some big corporate media polls who you came on our show, Mark, pre-hurricane, and you said the Kamala collapse, give it a week or two, is exactly what you said. And that was probably 2 weeks ago. And here we are with multiple corporate media polls coming out this weekend. I'd love for you to do a little bit of a roundup, but NBC News was the one that shocked me, showing that Trump may win the popular freaking vote. It's nuts.
After putting out Harris +5. Again, let's not forget how absolutely in the tank NBC News was. So again, when I polled Pennsylvania in September, I had a tie, but that really was, some of these major events they get a lot of press coverage on. They do get a juice for about 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's more what pollsters call a response bias than anybody actually changing their mind. It's like somebody saw Kamala Harris do well on the idiot box, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll pick up this phone call. But there hasn't really been anything like that. And when we went into the field, we got Trump +3 in Pennsylvania. Now, we could do a roundup of all the states, but what you just showed was Trump winning, and it all hinged on Pennsylvania. And all of these numbers here, if you look at Real Clear Politics, there are some blue things in the Pennsylvania aggregate. But for instance, the biggest lead besides Bloomberg Morning Consult, who just sucks and we shouldn't even consider them, is New York Times Siena. But they oversampled Biden 2020 supporters, like I said, by 8 points. So that's a Trump +4. So you have us Trump +3, them Trump +4, Insider Advantage Trump +2, the Hill Emerson Trump +1, Trafalgar Trump +3. Rich Barris is coming out with another Trump lead. It's done. Trump's winning Pennsylvania. The only question is he going to win by more, and is he going to drag McCormick over the finish line? But like this has kind of looked like this for a month or two. Trump's up by 0.1 now. That's because Morning Consult and New York Times Siena are dragging that number down. But anybody could have looked at this page a month ago and said, well, look, you've looked at the numbers at the top too, like Clinton +8. No way. She lost. Biden +7. No way. He won by 1. So there's going to be polling error again to the left. Trump's going to have maybe a blowout in Pennsylvania, just depending on whether or not the Postal Service shows up for him.
Man, okay. So they're saying, I saw this panic clip this weekend. They're like, we can't depend on Philadelphia anymore. That's a really scary situation, right? They're like, we got to go out into the rural communities and get rural people to vote for Kamala. Good luck, man. Yeah. I got all these videos of Amish people with Trump flags on their horse and buggy. I don't think they're going to convince those people to vote for Kamala Harris, but
I have Trump down 20 points in Philadelphia, 19 points. That's probably what I'd expect to see. But Harris is only winning by 5 in the Philly suburbs. Northeast PA is Trump +8. Central PA, Trump. All the rural, central, and western PA is Trump +4. That's going to include, Pittsburgh and stuff. All these numbers here make sense to me, and it's a Trump +3. And like the internals, I really want to kind of get at this because we talked a bit about lying. And I think we talked before about how MSNBC viewers exhibited different behaviors and they thought different issues were important, like protecting democracy and abortion. Well, we threw a new question in, which is how likely in the next couple of years America is going to experience another civil war or a revolution. And the number now is 46% of voters in Pennsylvania who think it's at least somewhat likely. That's the highest number I've ever seen. So we've looked at that at a national level. It's been 41% recently in the last couple of years. This is how politically divisive swing states are now. 15% very likely, 31% at least somewhat likely, only 14% say not at all likely. And the real sad one for me is that 18 to 29-year-olds, who I think are going to turn out big and who I think are going to break more towards Trump than everybody expects. 72% of them, civil war likely in the next few years.
Man, must be some Tim Pool listeners there. Okay, so talking through North Carolina and Georgia. North Carolina and Georgia, they were hit hard. I think that's a lot of people are scared that those communities get decimated. Though nobody shows up to vote because they have no power, like down in Tampa, right? We got no power left. They're saying Thursday we'll have the power back on. Okay, so how are you gonna? If my my family's not gonna go down there, snakes in the yard, like no groceries, gas lines. Is that going to affect the vote? Do you have any concerns about that in swing states like Georgia and North Carolina?
Yeah, that's a tough one because the way pollsters operate, especially North Carolina, is that they're just going to have quotas for different regions in the state, and they're just going to leave the quotas open until the quotas are filled. So you're not necessarily going to get a read on whether people are going to turn out or not because they're affected by the storm. I think DeSantis did a pretty good job laying out what emergency voting looks like. I hope that the governors of Georgia and North Carolina respond in kind. But I think it's very realistic to be concerned about those states because in the Real Clear Politics aggregate, they're only up by a half a point for Trump. Now, again, I think that they're massively to left because of all of the polling errors. But you did see Democrats come out and start talking about North Carolina. I mean, Axelrod said something horrifying. I forget his exact words, but it was essentially, let's just like fix the blue areas and let the red areas squander because it's going to hurt our odds of winning. So I'm going into the field. The polling's done. I haven't processed it yet. For North Carolina, I expect to see, based on my PA +3, is something +4 or +5 for Trump. But what we'll be able to do is look by region and say, okay, like now what does it look like if that has a 10% or 20% less turnout? I really think it's important to get as much data from Georgia and North Carolina as possible before this election, because right now, like according to Real Clear Politics, I think the states are tighter than they should be. But again, with Pennsylvania going Trump +3, Georgia and North Carolina should not be on the table.
Yeah, you're not going to win. You're not going to get like a +10, +18 in Iowa and then lose Michigan and Wisconsin. That's not how the Midwest works. I'm from the Midwest, bro. It's like that's not how we're all like it's melted pot. Like that's not how those states work. Do you see a path for Kamala Harris?
No, not at all. Maybe I'll have to eat my words, but I do think, listen, you're putting this on YouTube, and I don't want to talk too much about it. There is massive and distributed problems with elections, and I think voters are really concerned about it. In this poll, 70% of Pennsylvania voters are at least think it's at least somewhat likely that the outcome will be affected by cheating. So that's a horrifying number, and of course, they all lived through 2020. But no, I absolutely don't, because I think, again, with Trump on the ballot, all of the polling leans left. And if the numbers are moving to the right, as we all predicted, I don't think we've seen that in the battleground states yet, too. So I think people are going to start to move right there. And these are all going to look like unwinnable situations for Kamala Harris in the next week or two. And, that's like tough luck, right? Trump has never been leading in the polls, and he is now.
Do you think that right now, like today, as we talk, that this is the best, mathematically, this is the best time to be a Trump voter in Trump's political history?
Yeah, in October, yeah. I mean, Trump would have loved to have had the election back in the middle of July, right after the week he got shot. But yeah, every single one of these states, you'll see the same pattern. There wasn't as much polling error in Georgia, and we could talk about that. But I think like on the aggregate in every single one of these states, Trump is outperforming where he has in the 4 years ago and in 8 years ago. The polling industry is not fixed. You're hearing it from me. And everything between now and then, I think, is just more of what you're going to see now, unless an act of God happens, more Democrat backbiting, more of the places that actually want viewers coming out and easing their viewers into the potential that Trump is going to be the president. Everybody except MSNBC, essentially. And I think probably a lot of positivity, a lot of good video out of Trump events. And I think you're already seeing news stories about how Kamala Harris is rejiggering her campaign with the help of former Obama staffers, but he didn't exactly come out and help the campaign any with his little segment that he had last week either. So it's all a mess. I don't know how they're going to get it together with this little time left to the election.
Oh, so you're saying Barack Obama showing up looking like Slender Man, like all dusty and broken and sad and like gray, and like the guy looks rough, okay? Like the guy looks like he really could use a Big Mac. And he's showing up and he's like talking in the lamest possible way. The body language is incredible here. The dudes are like, I'm bored behind him. They're like, I'm bored. Shut up. Like, I'm bored. And then he's sitting there being like, you got to support Kamala Harris because she grew up in the same neighborhoods as you. Bro, she grew up in Montreal. Like, she didn't grow up in the same neighborhoods as these guys. He's talking to dudes, he calls them the brothers, in Philadelphia. Like, everyone knows she grew up in Montreal. She grew up in Canada. Like, they're like, no, she didn't grow up like us. And this seems to have backfired. I mean, we were able to pick up a bunch of TikTok videos of Black Americans being like, saying things to Barack Obama I'm not allowed to say on the stream, but they say it. So, their voices matter, right? Yeah. And it's like that. This seems like a huge political backfire. Have you seen anything in the polling that this has like helped Kamala Harris?
Oh, no. I'll give you exact numbers of why I think it hasn't. I mean, the real polling, like post Barack Obama, we're not going to see anything. By the time we get data back, it's going to all blend into the noise. The fact is that this is a presidential administration that Kamala Harris is attached to, right? She is, voters think she is, who had stadiums around the country chanting FJB just 3 years ago. It's an unpopular administration. And then this is the same administration that put us through COVID lockdowns and shut everybody's business. So we put into the field, and we'll get it from the other states too, but this is Pennsylvania numbers. Do you trust the United States federal government? 53% of Pennsylvania voters say no. Only 31% say yes. Only 28% of 18 to 29-year-olds say yes. Only 30% of Black voters say yes. 15% of Republicans, only 23% of independents say yes. 59% say no. And it's like, they're going to think that a Dick Cheney endorsement is going to move the needle. Like, how does that work? How are you going to trot out George W. Bush and Barack Obama and say, see, guys, these authority figures who put you through hell say that they want you to consume this product candidate? It's just not. That's right. I mean, totally different situation.
Just don't ask questions, consume product. Don't ask questions, consume more product.
And it worked for them for a bit. My theory was it just was never going to get them to election day. Like literally, I did the charts. I have charts showing the 18 to 39-year-old support, and they absolutely did flood back to Kamala Harris in August, and they're already starting to peel back off.
Okay,
it just
real quick,
doesn't work.
Real quickly, here you go. Your friends at the New York Times, your favorites. Yeah. I mean, you're such huge fans. Black voters drift away from Democrats, imperiling Kamala Harris. Ooh, boy. Donald Trump doing potentially better than any Republican in my lifetime. I didn't live through Nixon. With Hispanics and Blacks, do you see that in your numbers?
Oh, 100%. 100%. It's all a matter of degrees. Now, I feel sorry for Nate Cohn at the New York Times, to be honest with you. I think he's really trying hard to be accurate. And I think, like, looking into that Pennsylvania number, some managing editor somewhere said, no, there's no way we're running with a Trump. There's no way we're doing that. Go back to the drawing board. And then he puts out an article that's apologetic. But yeah, over the last 3 cycles now, we have polling on Donald Trump on the ballot. And the Black vote, the Hispanic vote, and the 18 to 39-year-old vote has been increasingly every single cycle moving towards Donald Trump. We have him taking home about 25-ish% of the Black vote right now, reliably in almost every single one of the polls. Now, New York Times, Sienna says 15. There isn't a real measuring stick we could compare it to, because I think the exit polling also isn't necessarily accurate on every single demographic. But the point is that in our polling, we only had upper single digits for Trump in the Black vote with Hillary Clinton, and now here he is getting almost 30%. The same directional movement as New York Times Sienna has. You
can't win when you're. I mean, Kamala Harris this weekend at 50% with Latino voters. Wait, what? It's talk about panic time. Like when you've when your margins look like that with black voters, and when you're tied with Trump with Latino voters, you're talking about like the opposite of what they want, which is a majority to rule forever. You're talking about like a non-functional Democrat party that can't win.
Yeah, 100%. Hispanic vote. I've seen the same kind of thing. In fact, some of my polls, I have Trump actually winning the Hispanic vote. And in Pennsylvania, it was Harris plus 15. So that's like, and again, right? Like this is all predictable. Hispanic population leans more Catholic. Catholic voters go Trump by almost double digits. And we had a question here where I believe the number was almost 2/3 of the electorate in Pennsylvania think it's at least somewhat important that the president of the United States exhibit religious values. I mean, just incredible. And the number for Trump supporters was about 20 points higher than Kamala Harris supporters. So they can call his behavior anti-Christian or crass all they want. But ultimately, what it comes down to is the type of America that Donald Trump is painting. And that's one where you can afford your food and have a job and not have everything focused on lies and divisiveness and single issues like abortion that, quite frankly, don't represent what people are concerned about right now.
Mark, I got a tough one for you. Everyone hates the hypotheticals, but you actually have the math to back it up. Is Kamala Harris going to win some of these swing states? Like, which one's she going to? How are you going to pull them off? Like, what are you going to do here when I'm walking the street? So you have real math. I have just anecdotal evidence. But every state I go to and every street I walk in, including but not limited to Barack Obama's neighborhood in the south side of Chicago, a mile from his presidential library, I couldn't find a single Kamala voter. In fact, every one of those homies were like, I want Trump now. Malik Obama shared that video this weekend. I find that there is this big, untapped, probably tens of millions of Americans that can't be polled that are voting for Trump. And so when I see these polls, I just add like a couple extra points to Trump based on that silent Trump vote. And I'm looking at everything tied. And then I put in anecdotally what I know, which is that these voters, right? Like this is that young man's too young to vote, but like that they probably are not being polled correctly. And so I add like Trump plus 3 or 5 to these swing states. I'm like, can Kamala Harris even win any of these swing states?
I think so. And I think a lot of it comes down to how hard it really is to poll the states and how big a margin of error really is. I had Nevada really tight. I had Trump down in Wisconsin and Michigan. Again, I haven't gotten those numbers back yet from this cycle. I expect to see Trump margins because they're going to be really thin. But again, what you're asking me to do is I have my numbers. They say the race is tight. Just statistically speaking, Harris might pick up some of those states. I don't think she's going to pick up Pennsylvania now. I don't think she was ever going to pick up North Carolina. I also think that if those 2 states go, Georgia goes. And then the other ones, like, I honestly don't know. But you have to also understand the reality of in a post-2020 world. I think that if you ask a pollster how many real Democrat voters there are, that's a really tough question to answer. It really is. After 2020, because what happens after every cycle when a pollster is surprised about the outcome? And listen, our polling was actually pretty close in a national popular vote. The difference is that our polls were way too left-leaning in the states, but other people, you come back and you look at that kind of cycle and you say, well, in 2018 and 2022, also the Democrats overperformed. Every time a pollster's off, they'll reweight their polls to what they missed by. So if suddenly a couple million Democrat votes miraculously show up, they will say, oh, look, the electorate turned out more Democrat than I thought it would be. So there could be that kind of surprise again, and I have no idea where that surprise comes from. It could be all the polls were just lying. It could be people were lying in the polls and Trump's going to perform better. It could be there's a very energized 18 to 29-year-old base that's breaking hard right that shows up that doesn't answer polls. Or it could be there's a bunch of ballots being stuffed somewhere and being muled around by people. Like, those are all the surprises. And again, I think they matter a whole lot less when Trump's up 3 in Pennsylvania, and almost everybody agrees about it. But my understanding is that there have been some things the RNC is doing to get out in front of some of those surprises. I guess we'll see how effective those are. And also, I would say just again and again, everything I see in my polling shows that the country has shifted massively to the right. I looked at numbers in New York and New Jersey as well and saw the same kind of thing. We had in New York a Biden plus 23 electorate go to plus 11. So every single time I look in my polling, I see the country has moved massively to the right. I don't think the polling reflects it yet. I think Trump's going to outperform his polling like he has the last 2 cycles. And we're probably going to be surprised about some stuff. Maybe Kamala Harris wins a swing state or 2, especially if they break all the machines and, give people magic markers or whatever for the ballot. But if those things happen again, I think the Republicans have nobody but themselves to blame, ostensibly.
Mark, I want to extend an offer to you in closing here, and please toss up Mark's X page. I want everybody to follow Mark. Like, you should get accurate information, but I want to extend an offer to you. When Trump wins Pennsylvania, I've regularly on the show called for, I want a ride in one of these horse and buggies. I want a ride in one of the Trump horse and buggies. And you are welcome to come with me, Mark. And you can ride in the Amish horse and buggy with the Trump flags. And we're going to do that to celebrate Trump's victory in November. It's going to be really exciting. And so I think you should come along. Okay. You're one of the few guys predicting this accurately. I just want to extend the offer here live.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that for sure. Absolutely. Go get some raw milk and some smoked ring bologna and hang with the Amish. Let's do it.
You're in Jersey, homie. It wouldn't be too far of a trip for you. Everybody follow Mark Mitchell. Rasmussen reports the best. Sorry for the technical difficulty this morning, Mark. You're the man.
All right. Yeah, sorry for that. It's complicated.
That's all right, homie. That's all right, homie. And it is an opportunity to say bye to the dead fish in the studio. There you go. Okay, see, we got to get a nickname for the fish. I don't know. We got to get a nickname for the fish. We're gonna work on it. Thank you, Mark. God bless you, man.
Thanks again.